it's snowing and it's cold. You're gonna have to find a crew, it can't be anyone. They'll have to be there by your side and do what must be done. So go, man, you know that you have it night through day. The pain you feel it to bring it on with the Archie County Band.
Good afternoon, folks. You are very welcome to Bandido Talks. And you know, it's been a little while since we've had some Bandido's beef. Do you not think that? You know, I was thinking this over the last few days. I thought, you know, there's going to be a live show this week. We were talking all about Eric Swalwell over on Rumble. And all of that. Allegations. Those kinds of things. And you know, here on YouTube, I thought, we haven't expressed our beef here on the show for a few weeks. And so I thought this was the perfect opportunity to bring up why I, Mr. Bandido, have a beef with Deadwood. You wouldn't think it. I did not think 1 week ago that I would be doing this show because I, of course, discovered Deadwood, the series, only in the last month. Only a month ago. It's hard to believe that I've been living on the planet for 31 years and somehow it has escaped me that there was this TV series called Deadwood. Now, I only discovered this a month ago. And so I went through the series. And it was a great series. A tremendous series. I have to say, it has the Bandidos' full seal of approval. I thought the first season was an 8 out of 10. The second season was a 9 out of 10. Then the third season, I'd give it a 7.5 out of 10. So, you know, if we were to average it all out, it's probably about a, let's say an 8.5 out of 10. Deadwood, the series. So I was very satisfied with Deadwood, the series. Tremendous stuff. You may be saying, well, where's the beef? Perhaps you haven't read the thumbnail. Maybe you haven't read the description of the show, because there is a difference between Deadwood the series and Deadwood the movie. Now, I need to make something clear, folks. There are going to be a whole bunch of spoilers in this episode. So if you have not seen Deadwood, let's say you've listened to the Bandido's glowing endorsement of Deadwood. You may be thinking, I want to watch this. I don't want to have the bias. Maybe it's not even the bias. I just don't want, you know, to have the plot spoiled for me. If you're one of those people and you want to see the series and the movie, well then you're going to have to pause the show or tune out and then come back later, because I'm not going to be censoring myself when it comes to spoilers and all of this stuff. We're going to get straight into it. I'm going to talk like a free man. So no censoring at all. So you've got 3 seconds to tune out if you want to watch Deadwood. 1, 2, 3. All right, you've been warned. Spoilers will be coming. Now, Deadwood, this series, was shot between 2004 and 2006. Deadwood, the series, I really like. Deadwood, the movie, was released in 2019. About 13 years after the final season of the series. Now, folks, this is nothing against the actors. I think the acting in the series and in the movie is tremendous. Really good stuff. So I'm not really taking a pot shot at any of the actors. This discrepancy that I'm going to try and explain between the series and the movie, what separates the series from the movie, it's nothing to do with the quality of the acting. We've got great actors involved in Deadwood, so this isn't a critique of the acting abilities. Modern day movies I do have to say, it's a bit like music. Modern day acting is shite. A lot of it. Modern day music is shite. A lot of it. So it's nothing to do with the acting. It's to do with man-woman dynamics. This is the reason why I would grade Deadwood the series. As I've said, Season 1 an 8 out of 10, Season 2 a 9 out of 10, Season 3 7 out of 10, maybe a 7.5. Overall, Deadwood the series, 8.5 out of 10. Excellent stuff. No complaints from the Bandido. The movie, however, which came 13 years later in 2019. 2019. The movie, I would score it a 2 out of 10. So you can see there's quite a drop off here. We're going from an 8 out of 10, let's say, for the series, to a 2 out of 10 for the movie. And so what we're going to do on the show is we are going to explore why the series gets an 8 out of 10 overall, and the movie drops off the face of the earth. It just drops off a cliff. The movie goes from, having a series that's an 8 out of 10 to a 2 out of 10. And I'm going to explain to you why I grade the movie so poorly. The only reason I don't give the movie a 1 out of 10 is because of the actors. I do like the actors. I think the acting is really good. On the whole, there are a few bits and pieces in the movie that are questionable, but on the whole, the acting's fine. It's not a deficiency in quality with regards to the acting. So that's the only reason I give it a 2 out of 10. Because, the actors and the quality of the acting is still good. It's just whoever has written the script for Deadwood the movie needs a toe in the hole. A big toe in the hole. We're going to explain why. So let's get into this. Spoilers are coming. So we're going to try and figure out why Deadwood, the series, being an 8.5 out of 10, drops to a 2 out of 10 when we come to analysing the movie. Now, there's a few things we need to lay out. We're going to break this up. This live show is going to be broken up into 4 sections. 4. Hopefully we can rattle through this in reasonable time. Section number 1. We're going to do a recap of man and woman mate value. That's the first thing. Now, I know you may be thinking, how is this related to Deadwood, the movie, and Deadwood, the series? It is. We need to lay the groundwork first so that you fully understand why I think the movie is a heap of shite. And along the way here, we're going to learn a bunch of interesting stuff. So the first part, we're going to do a recap of man-woman dynamics. Mate value, we could say. Man-woman mate value. Now, we've talked about this before on the show, so it's just going to be a recap. That's the first part. Man-woman mate value. The second part of the show, we're going to talk about dominance hierarchies. We've also talked about these before. We're going to go into a bit more detail today. So that'll be the second part of the show, dominance hierarchies. The third part of the show, part 3, is going to be about why women will more often than not always be outcompeted by men when it comes to ascending dominance hierarchies. That's going to be the third part of the show. I said in the description, the feminists aren't going to want to watch this show. The feminists won't be happy. Oh well, you can tune out at any time. So that'll be part 3. Part 3 will be why women, on average, will more than likely always get outcompeted by men when it comes to ascending or climbing a dominance hierarchy. And then part 4, the final part of the show, we're going to tie it all together And we're going to explain why Deadwood the movie is so shite in comparison to Deadwood the series. So 4 parts to get through, folks. This could go on a while. I'm looking at the clock here. 5 to 5 Irish time. Let's see how quickly we can rattle through this. Okay, so part 1. The first thing we're going to talk about is man and woman mate value. This is recap, folks, because we've talked about this many times before, here on YouTube and over on Rumble. So for those of you who follow along on both channels, this is going to be recap. You will have heard this before. So, a woman's mate value. What does mate value even mean? Mate value means how the opposite sex assesses you, what the opposite sex is looking for in you, what the opposite sex finds valuable in you when it comes to being engaged in a romantic relationship. So each member, each gender is looking out for certain things in the other gender that they find attractive or valuable when it would come to forming a romantic relationship. We call this mate value. So, first things first, men and women are looking for different things in one another. Mate value isn't the same in men and women. That's the first thing. Now, the bulk of a woman's mate value, in other words, the bulk of a woman's sexual attractiveness lies in her physical attractiveness. So see this whole idea, how smart is the woman? You know, how skilled is the woman? How much money the woman has? How well the woman can play the guitar? Men do not care about all of that stuff. All men are really looking for when it comes to assessing the mate value of a woman, the bulk, the vast majority of a woman's mate value. Now, if you're looking for a friendship or a business relationship, those are different things. We're not talking about friendships. We're not talking about business relationships. We're talking about mate value. So a man's value that he places in a woman, what is a man looking for? He wants the woman to be hot. In other words, he wants her to be physically attractive. So the vast majority of a woman's mate value through the lens of a heterosexual male is her physical attractiveness. If a woman is whack out of shape, fat, and looks like she's pregnant because she has so much visceral fat, she's so wide at the hips, automatically disqualified. You might qualify to be a friend, you might qualify as a business partner, you ain't gonna qualify as a romantic partner. If the man doesn't find you physically attractive, you are not going to qualify for a romantic partnership. So the vast majority of a woman's mate value is not her brains, not her skills, not how much money she has. It's in her physical attractiveness. Why do you think women are so interested in makeup, beauty products? Most people who go to a gym looking to lose weight are women. Why do you think women are so fanatical about their physical appearance? I'm going to get my hair done today and I'm going to pay 150 quid for it. I'm going to get my nails done today. I'm going to get my eyebrows done today. I'm going to get a skin massage. When the fuck do you hear men saying this? Men aren't going to get their hair done for 150 quid. They're going to the barbers, 5 quid. That'll do the job. Men aren't looking to get their eyebrows done unless they're gay. Men aren't looking to get their nails done unless they're gay. So, you know, women, there's a reason why women are absolutely fascinated and intrinsically, inherently fascinated and interested in beauty and physical attractiveness. I wonder why. The reason why women, more so than men, considerably more so than men, the reason why women are so interested in how beautiful they look, in how physically attractive they look, is because they know that most of their mate value resides in their physical attractiveness. If a man doesn't find a woman physically attractive, she's cooked when it comes to a romantic partnership. Okay, so women's mate value is pretty much all in her physical attractiveness. If a woman doesn't qualify physically for a man, there's no amount of skills that she has, money that she has, fucking brains, it doesn't matter. The man will not be interested. He wants a potential romantic partner to be hot. Full stop. Okay, so a woman's mate value is all in her physical attractiveness. How sexy she looks. What about a man? Is it exactly the same for a man? What's a woman looking for in a man? Is it all about physical attractiveness? No, it's different. Women are looking for different things in a man. Is a man's physical attractiveness important? Yes, it is. So how a man looks, how physically attractive and handsome he looks, is important. But it's not as important as it is for a woman. A woman's physical attractiveness is considerably more important to a man than a man's physical attractiveness is to a woman. So a man's physical attractiveness is important, but it's not the be-all end-all, because there's another thing that women are looking for in men that men don't look for in women. So men are just looking for the woman to be physically attractive. He just wants the gal to be hot. Women, yes, they are looking for signals of physical attractiveness, that's true, but they're looking for something else that's even more important. And do you know what that is? Women want evidence of a man's ability to acquire and defend resources. Why? Because the man needs to demonstrate to the woman, if that woman is going to allow that man to impregnate her with his sperm, she needs to see evidence that that man has the ability to protect and provide for her, because she has to spend 9 months basically in a slightly incapacitated state. She has to carry the child for 9 months, and then she has to give birth to this ball of jelly that can't even speak, it can't even stand upright, pisses and shits itself all day. She has to spend years rearing this thing. The man doesn't have to do that. The man doesn't have to carry a child. Man doesn't have to give birth. Man doesn't have to invest all of this time, energy, and attention in this fucking ball of jelly that's churned out of the woman. But the woman does. So the woman, there's a very high biological cost to getting pregnant if you're a woman. You're talking years of your life is going to be consumed by this little ball of jelly that gets churned out. So if you're a woman and you're going to allow a man to impregnate you, you need to be selecting very carefully, not just for physical attractiveness in the man. You need to be getting evidence from the man that he has an extraordinary ability to acquire and defend resources and to protect you. Because you have to look after this little minion that you're going to churn out if you're a woman, and you need guarantees. You need insurance that the man, when he impregnates you, isn't going to piss off over the hill and leave you as a single mother with no resources and no protection. So women aren't just paying attention to the man's physical attractiveness. They are paying attention to how invested he is in her and how willing he is going to be to share his resources and to provide his protection. But she needs to be seeing evidence that he can acquire resources and defend them. And then she also needs to see that he's willing to share them resources with her and the little minion that she's going to churn out. And we know this, folks. If you are doubting what I'm saying, all you need to do is look at Hollywood. What do you see in Hollywood? How many old, over-the-hill male actors in their 70s and 80s, how many of them actors are banging some 21-year-old chick? We've all seen it, folks. We've all seen some old wrinkly actor. He's about a 2 out of 10, maybe a 1 out of 10. He's obese, he's fat, he's wrinkly. He's not physically attractive and handsome. He's 75 years of age. He's over the hill. Yet, on his arm, he has some hottie, some 9 out of 10 woman who's 21 years of age. Well, I wonder why. Do you think that 9 out of 10 woman who's smoking hot, do you think that she's dating him because he's physically attractive? Fuck me. Of course she isn't. This is all the evidence you need. This is why I say the physical attractiveness of a man is nowhere near as important as the physical attractiveness of a female is to a man. Women who are smoking hot, 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 on the physical attractiveness scale, are more than happy to sleep with some old, wrinkly, ugly, obese dude, as long as he's a millionaire or a billionaire, and as long as he's willing to funnel resources her direction, and as long as he is willing to protect and provide for her. Folks, this isn't revolutionary stuff. We've seen this a million times. We've seen all the fat, ugly, over-the-hill actors, musicians, famous people, and even rich, wealthy billionaires, businessmen. How many times have we seen some 5'4" man? He's almost like a dwarf, fat and ugly, 2 out of 10, and he has a fucking, 6 foot blonde bombshell, 10 out of 10 on the physical attractiveness scale, hanging off his arm. Fuck me, folks. It clearly has nothing to do with his physical attractiveness. It has everything to do with his ability to acquire and defend resources and then funnel those resources her direction. Okay, so that's the recap on man and woman mate value. Just to summarize, a woman's mate value is mostly residing in her physical attractiveness. Men couldn't give a shit how many resources a woman has. Men couldn't give a shit how skilled she is, what job she has, how smart she is. They don't care. If you don't qualify as a woman as being physically attractive in the eyes of a man, your romantic prospects are cooked. So for the woman, it's all in her physical attractiveness, pretty much. Different for a man. For a man, his mate value is not all wrapped up in his physical attractiveness. Physical attractiveness is important for a man, but it's not as important as his ability to acquire and defend resources and then funnel resources the direction of the woman. When I say resources, what do I mean? Resources, money. Just let's summarize it as money. If the man is happy to funnel his money towards the woman and allow her to live a lavish, luxurious lifestyle, she doesn't give a shit what he looks like. Fine by her. So for a man, physical attractiveness is important, but his ability to acquire and defend resources, provide and protect for the woman, and funnel those resources, or money, towards the woman, that's actually a bigger player through the lens of a woman. Okay, so that's part one of the show, folks. This is important when it comes to us assessing Deadwood and why the series was great, but the movie was shite. Now, let's move on to part two. We are now going to talk about dominance hierarchies. We talk about this on the show frequently. What is a dominance hierarchy? Let me explain it using a graphic example. I want you to think of a ladder. What do we have on a ladder? We have rungs or steps on a ladder. We would all agree, wouldn't we? So on a ladder, you have rungs or steps. Down at the bottom of the ladder, you have the first rung, and then you have a final rung at the top of the ladder. A dominance hierarchy is like a ladder with rungs or steps. Dominance hierarchies are nothing other than status hierarchies. That's what a dominance hierarchy basically is. Each rung of the ladder represents a comparative increase in status. So if you're here on the ladder and the next rung's up here, that means on that rung there's more status, more status, more status. And then the person who sits at the top of the ladder on the top rung has the most status out of everyone. And we say that the person who sits at the top of the ladder on the top rung, they are at the top of the dominance hierarchy. In other words, they are at the top of the status hierarchy. So the person who sits at the top of the ladder or at the top of the dominance hierarchy, they reign supreme over everybody else. They have the most status. What does status get you, folks? The more status you have in this life, the greater the access you have to valuable resources. So if you are a high status individual, you are perceived in the eyes of other people as being extremely valuable. And so you get to swim in circles whereby you are gaining access to very valuable resources. What are these valuable resources? Money, status, power, influence, women. If you sit at the top of a dominance hierarchy, you have more status. And if you have more status, you have more resources. And what did we say earlier? What are women looking for in men? Resources. Evidence that they are able to acquire and defend resources and funnel them the direction of the woman. So a dominance hierarchy, think of it just like a ladder. Anybody who sits on the first rung of the ladder is what we are going to call low status. So for example, the people who brush floors, the floor sweepers in this world. The floor sweepers are low status. They sit at the bottom of a dominance hierarchy. Why? Because there's nothing unique about floor sweeping. Millions of people, billions of people sweep floors around the world for a living. It's not very competitive. All you need to do is be able to pick up the brush and move your arms and your legs. That's it. You don't really need any significant cognitive capabilities. You don't need any brain power. You just need to be able to move your body and be able to identify dirt on the floor. So floor sweepers are at the bottom of the ladder. In other words, they are at the bottom of a dominance hierarchy. Now, the further you ascend up the ladder or the dominance hierarchy, the more competitive it gets. Because sitting at the top of a dominance hierarchy are a whole bunch of valuable resources. And everyone wants access to valuable resources. Who doesn't want more money? Who doesn't want more power, more influence? Hotter women. So there are valuable resources to be gained at the top of a dominance hierarchy. But the trade-off is, as you ascend each rung of the ladder, the competitive stress or strain increases. So as you move up the dominance hierarchy or you move up the ladder, it gets more competitive because the closer you get to the top, in other words, the closer you get to the valuable resources, the more intense the competition becomes, because other people also want access to those resources. So, we have a dominance hierarchy. And a dominance hierarchy literally represents, really, if we were to just distill it down, it represents nothing other than status. People at the bottom are low status, people at the top are high status. People at the bottom don't have access to very valuable resources. People at the top do have access to very valuable resources. Why is everybody not at the top of a dominance hierarchy? Why does all of humanity not reside at the top of the dominance hierarchy, benefiting from all the valuable resources? The reason why is because it's very competitive. It's super competitive. Let me give you a basic example of a dominance hierarchy in real life. Look at a restaurant. So I want you to think of a kitchen in a restaurant where the food is cooked. So the people who wash the dishes, they are at the bottom of that dominance hierarchy. So the dishwashers are at the bottom. They're at the first rung of the ladder. Low status, they wash the dishes. Now, let's imagine the dishwasher who's at the bottom of the dominance hierarchy in this restaurant, let's imagine they get promoted to, I don't know, making salads, chopping the vegetables for the salads. So let's say, they've been diligently putting their work in, washing the dishes, and let's say someday the owner, the top chef of the restaurant says, you know what, I'm going to promote you. What does that mean, folks? I'm going to promote. Promotion means you move up the dominance hierarchy. When you hear someone say, I got a promotion at work, what they're really saying to you is, I moved one or multiple rungs up the ladder of the dominance hierarchy. That's what they're saying. And what they're really trying to tell you is, I gained more status. I'm now a more high status individual in my workplace. So if you move from washing the dishes to chopping the vegetables for the salads, you've moved up in the dominance hierarchy. So you've acquired a little bit more status. You've moved up a rung or two on the ladder. Now let's say you spend a number of months chopping the vegetables, and let's say the head chef looks at you and says, you know what? I think you're doing a good job with the vegetables. You're making very nice salads. I think you have the potential to work in our fish section. And so now you get another promotion. You get promoted to the fish section. So now you're out of vegetable land and you're now working with meat. And of course, in restaurant land, meat is a more high value. If you're involved in the, processing of the meat in the restaurant, that's a little more of a high status promotional jump, we could say, compared to cutting the vegetables for the salads. So let's say the chef says, you know what, I like how you've been making the salads. I'm going to promote you to the fish section. Well, what has just happened? You've just moved up the dominance hierarchy another rung or two on the ladder. Now you're working in the fish section. And let's say you spend a few months working in the fish section. And let's say the top chef who owns the restaurant, the head chef, let's say he says to you, you know what? Fergal, you're working really well in the fish section. I'm now going to make you head of the fish section. So you're not just working under someone in the fish section, now you're going to become head of the section. You're going to tell all the other people in the fish section how to do their jobs. You're going to direct them. What has happened? Fergal has moved up another few rungs in the dominance hierarchy. Now let's say, after a few more months, the head chef says, you know what, Fergal? You've a great attitude, you've developed your skills tremendously. I'm now going to make you sous chef. I'm now going to make you my deputy. Well, what has happened? That's like being promoted to Vice President of the United States. You're now the Vice President of the kitchen in this restaurant. What has happened? You've been promoted. You've moved up the dominance hierarchy. You're up another few rungs on the ladder. What do you think is happening to your status as you're moving up from dishwasher to vegetable preparer to working in the fish section to being head of the fish section to now being sous chef to being the deputy? What's happening to your status? You're increasing your status. And what happens? Your access to resources. Do you get paid more? Do you gain more access to more valuable resources? Damn right you do. Your salary goes up. You get paid more as sous chef than you do as dishwasher. In other words, you've gained access to more resources because you're moving up the dominance hierarchy and you're accumulating more status within this dominance hierarchy. Now let's imagine the head chef. He's been doing this for 40 years. And let's say he wants to retire. And let's imagine the head chef says to you, Fergal, he says to Fergal, you know what, Fergal, I'm going to retire. You are now going to become head chef of this restaurant. Fergal has now just become president, effectively. He's the president of the restaurant. Where does Fergal now sit in the dominance hierarchy? He's right at the top. He's right at the top. In order for Fergal to ascend from dishwasher to now head chef, he had to out-compete all of the other people in that restaurant. The further he ascended that dominance hierarchy, the more competitive it became. And he outcompeted all of his other opponents, all of his other adversaries, who were also vying for head chef. But he made it. He outcompeted everyone. Now he sits at the top of the dominance hierarchy. He earns more money than everybody else. He has more status than everybody else. He has more power than everybody else in the kitchen. He has more influence. He gets to tell them what to do. This is what a dominance hierarchy is, folks. A dominance hierarchy is a status hierarchy. In the animal kingdom, we call it the pecking order. So Fergal's now at the top of the pecking order. He's at the top of the ladder. And he now has access to more valuable resources than everybody else. He gets paid the most. He has the most influence in the kitchen, the most power. He has the most status. And you can be damn sure, if there was a woman presented, let's say a 9 out of 10 walks into this kitchen, a fucking blonde bombshell. Do you think the blonde bombshell is going to be interested in the dishwasher? Or is the blonde bombshell going to be interested in the man who sits at the top of the dominance hierarchy? Is she going to be more interested in the man who has given evidence because of his position at the top of the dominance hierarchy? He's giving her evidence that he's outcompeted everybody else. He's giving her evidence that he has access to very valuable resources. And she will know that if she gets romantically engaged with him, she's more likely to get more resources out of him than the dishwasher. So who does she go for? Head chef wins every time. So that's what a dominance hierarchy is, folks. Think of it simply like a ladder with rungs. The bottom of the ladder is low status. When you're low status, you have limited access to valuable resources. But the competitive stress and strain that you feel is significantly less. As you ascend a dominance hierarchy, you feel increasing competitive stress and strain. There's more intense competition because there are more valuable resources on the line. And as you ascend a dominance hierarchy, there's a scarcity of the posts, of the jobs that are available at the top of the dominance hierarchy. There's only one head chef. How many fucking dishwashers can you have? You can have multiple dishwashers. You can have loads of them. You could have 10 dishwashers, 15 dishwashers. You can only have one head chef. There's only one head chef. And so as you ascend dominance hierarchies, there's a scarcity. That's what drives the competition. The scarcity of the most prized roles in society, the most prized positions. That's why the competition's so intense, because those prized roles, they allow the people who are successful to gain access to the most valuable resources that there are on the planet. So, that's part 2, dominance hierarchies. You need to keep this in mind, folks, when we're talking about Deadwood. So that's part 2, dominance hierarchies. Let's move on to part 3. We're now going to talk about why, on average, men will more often than not outcompete women when it comes to ascending a dominance hierarchy. Why do I say this? Folks, you must understand that there is a fundamental difference in men and women's psychology and men and women's biology. There are fundamental differences that you cannot ignore. And these differences are the reason why men, more often than not, outcompete women easily when it comes to ascending a dominance hierarchy that we've just explained. Why? That's the question. Why do men outcompete women when it comes to acquiring resources and increasing their status? It's simple, folks, really. Number 1, men are more emotionally stable than women. What does that mean? It means that men are less likely to allow emotions to cloud their judgment. What happens when emotions cloud your judgment? You make mistakes. A woman's psychology is naturally, for good biological reasons, a woman's psychology is naturally more emotionally unstable than a man's. This emotional instability that women have makes them great for dealing with children. This is why women are so good at dealing with children. That instability in the woman's psychology allows them to interact at the level of a child. Men tend to be significantly more emotionally stable than women. So there's comparatively less emotionality in a man's psychology than a woman's. This isn't me taking a dig at either gender. It's just the way they are biologically wired in terms of their psychology. And for good reasons. Men need to be able to ascend dominance hierarchies. Why? Because men need to demonstrate to women that they can acquire and defend resources. So they need to have their psychology set up in a way that predisposes them to want to ascend a dominance hierarchy and to be successful when they try to do so. One part of this is their emotional stability. If you folks are going to ascend a dominance hierarchy, you are going to be subjected to intense competition. And that competition can take the form of very underhand, sneaky tactics from your competitors. Your competitors are going to try and deceive you, throw you under the bus, fuck you over. Because remember, as you head towards the top of a dominance hierarchy, there are a lot of valuable resources up there. So whenever you're ascending, your competitors will pull out every dirty trick in the book to try and ensure that they make it there first before you. Now, in order to be able to ascend a dominance hierarchy successfully, you would not want to be susceptible to emotional arguments that are going to allow your psychology, that's going to allow your emotions to cloud your judgment. This would be a fiasco, folks, because that would mean you would be easy to deceive. This is one of the reasons why women struggle to compete with men when it comes to climbing political dominance hierarchies or business dominance hierarchies. Men are more stable emotionally. Men are far less susceptible to emotional arguments. Men are far less susceptible to allowing their emotions to cloud their judgment. And so as a result, men are less prone to being deceived through an emotional argument. Men can spot an emotional argument or emotional tactics better than a woman. And that's nothing against women. That's just how the woman's psychology is set up. Women aren't designed to compete with men in a dominance hierarchy ascending race. And that's one reason. Emotional instability. Men are more stable on average than women, which means they are less able to be deceived into making a poor decision through an emotional argument, because men are less prone to allowing their emotions to cloud their judgment. Men are far better at using blunt logic than women. Women will allow themselves to be swayed by their emotions more so than a man. And that can lead you into a problematic set of circumstances if you're competing with a whole bunch of men. It's really easy, comparatively speaking, for a man to deceive a woman than for a man to deceive another man. Because if it's man on man, both men are going to be using their logic. They're not going to be susceptible to the emotionality in their psychology as much as a woman. So that's the first reason why women will more often than not struggle to compete with men when it comes to ascending dominance hierarchies. They're more emotionally unstable. Okay, what's the second reason why women struggle to compete with men in the competitive arena of life? The second reason is that women, on average, are more agreeable than men. Women are more agreeable than men. Why is this a problem? Men are more disagreeable, incidentally. Significantly more disagreeable. Why? Because men have a whole bunch more testosterone than females. Women don't have anywhere near as much testosterone as men. And it is the testosterone that drives this disagreeability that you see in men, and it's the lack of testosterone that drives the agreeability that you see in women. Now, why is being agreeable, if you're a woman, a problem if you want to compete against men when it comes to ascending a dominance hierarchy, which is extremely competitive? This is a problem because when you are more agreeable, you want to please other people. That's the definition of an agreeable person. An agreeable person wants to be accepted by other people. That's why they agree. That's why they don't disagree. Even if they internally disagree with someone, they outwardly will give the impression that they are agreeing. An agreeable person wants to be accepted. An agreeable person wants to please everybody. This is a problem if you're competing against a disagreeable man, a narcissistic man. Narcissism is nothing other than a whole bunch of disagreeability. Is that a word, disagreeability, disagreeableness? Maybe we'll say disagreeableness. Disagreeability. I'm not sure. Anyway, we'll use disagreeableness and agreeableness. I actually don't know which is the right word. Oh well. Anyway, so being agreeable is a problem because that means that you are going to bend and buckle to the demands of other people. In other words, when you're agreeable, it makes it easier to control and manipulate you. Because inherently agreeable people want to please everybody. They want to be accepted by everybody. And if you are a woman entering into an intensely competitive race against a man to ascend a dominance hierarchy, and you're preoccupied about pleasing everybody else and not looking out for number one, you see the man who you're competing against? He doesn't give a shit about pleasing everyone else. He just wants access to the valuable resources. And he'll do whatever it takes. He'll not bend the knee. He'll not buckle under the pressure. Oh no. He's laser focused. He's seen the top of the dominance hierarchy. He's seen the top rung of the ladder. And all he wants is access to the resources that are granted to him when he makes it up there. He doesn't give a shit if there's a few people pissed off at him. That's the beauty of being disagreeable. When you're disagreeable, you don't give a fuck. That's what disagreeableness allows you to do. Disagreeableness, by definition, is someone who doesn't bend the knee. They aren't looking to please everyone. That's why they disagree. They feel comfortable when people are at odds with them. So disagreeable people have no problem pissing a whole bunch of people off, so long as they get what they want. But if you're a woman who is inherently more agreeable than a man, you see, as you're competing against the man has no problem pissing off a whole bunch of people. But you'll be trying to please everybody. Oh, please don't hate me. Please don't hate me. Love me for who I am. I'm burying my heart and soul. Please accept me for who I am. You're going to get crushed. In a competitive race, if that is what your psychology is, which is what the woman's psychology is, folks, women are more agreeable than men. There are good biological reasons for this again. Being agreeable is important if you're a woman. It's very important. Because let's just throw up a scenario in our ancestral past. Let's say your tribe gets invaded by another tribe. And let's say the invading tribe kill all the men warriors. Let's say all the male warriors in your tribe, including your husband, get killed by this invading tribe. You as a woman, you are going to want to be able to adapt, let's just say, and adjust. And your agreeableness will allow you to do this if you're a woman. If you're some disagreeable arsehole, that invading tribe is going to look at you and say, well, you know what? You're not going to get favourable treatment from our men. If you catch my drift, it could get brutal, in other words. So a woman's agreeableness is important. It's also important when it comes to rearing offspring, and also as well to the dynamics within the tribe. If women had the same amount of disagreeableness as men, then everybody would be at everyone's throats, men and women. Women's agreeableness counterbalances men's disagreeableness in the tribe. So not only does a woman's agreeableness allow them to mould and adapt should an invading tribe kill all the other men, those women are more than happy to bend the knee and buckle and sleep with the invading tribe who has killed their husband. They are more than happy to do that, so long as they don't get raped or killed, or their children don't get killed. What allows you to do that? Agreeableness. But also, a man's disagreeability in a tribe needs to be counterbalanced. Women are more agreeable, and that gives a more balanced dynamic to the ancestral tribes of humans. If everyone, men and women, were all equally disagreeable, nobody would get along. everybody would be kicking the shit out of one another and constantly arguing. This is why women are more agreeable. There's a counterbalance there to ensure that the tribe doesn't literally fucking implode. Because if the tribe implodes, everybody loses out, including the women. So the women have evolved this agreeableness to balance out the dynamics in the tribe, because the men are more inherently disagreeable, but also it's a safety mechanism for the women. So that if all the men get killed in the tribe and there's an invading tribe coming in, the women have the natural psychology, the natural agreeableness to be able to mold and adapt themselves to changing circumstances. So, when it comes to ascending a dominance hierarchy, this agreeableness is a disaster. You are going to get tramped on. Disagreeable, narcissistic men will absolutely slaughter you in a competitive environment. If you are agreeable, if you're just looking to please everybody, if you just want to be accepted for who you are, you're going to get absolutely slaughtered by some disagreeable schmuck man who has his eyes on the prize at the top of the dominance hierarchy. He'll just tramp straight over the top of you because he doesn't give a shit who he pisses off as long as he gets to where he wants to be. So agreeableness. This is a problem for a woman because it makes women easier to manipulate and control. The agreeableness is a problem if you're competing against men. So this is a second reason why men just inherently are more able to outcompete women. So number one, we have men are more emotionally stable than women. And secondly, men are more disagreeable than women. Women are more agreeable. And that's a disaster if you're in a competitive struggle with some man. There's a third reason why women tend to get outcompeted by men. And it's to do with physical strength. Women are weaker than men physically. And I know you may think that's not a big deal when we're talking about climbing a dominance hierarchy, but it is. The fact that women know that a man could literally pull them by the hair and kick the shit out of them, because we have to be realistic, folks. In the female psychology, females or women know instinctively. They know that a man will be able to overpower them physically and kick the shit out of them. And so, as a result, because women are physically weaker than men, that makes women more prone to being intimidated. Women are far more likely to be intimidated by another man than some other man who's being intimidated or trying to be intimidated by another man. Men are less likely to be intimidated by other men, but women are far more likely to succumb to being intimidated. And this is a problem. If you're looking to ascend a dominance hierarchy and outcompete other men, you as a woman, your natural psychology will feel intimidation because your natural psychology knows that a man, if he wants to, it doesn't mean he will, but it's just the idea that he could. A man could, if he wanted to, beat the shit out of you and perhaps do a whole lot more to you as well, which would be unpleasant. And because you don't have the physical strength to defend yourself, you are more likely to be submissive. You're more likely, the intimidation that you feel is more likely to lead to you submitting. You're going to be more submissive. You're going to be more likely to bend the knee. If a man starts throwing intimidation signals your direction and he starts to threaten you, women are far more likely to buckle under threats and intimidation than other men. And the reason for this is because there's a basic biological difference between a woman's physical strength and a man's physical strength. So if you're competing in this race to the top of a dominance hierarchy, a woman's natural psychology knows that she could get the shit beaten out of her by a man. And that's a problem, because that means the woman is more likely to be intimidated and to be submissive. and to essentially bend the knee and pull out. So that's a third reason why men, more often than not, will outcompete women, because men have this trump card. The trump card being, yeah, all right, so you think you're legitimately competing with me? Well, I can just beat the shit out of you. I can just intimidate you. I'll send the mafia around to your house. I'll get my men to, break into your house and wreck your house. I'll get my men to send death threats to you and your loved ones. For a woman, that's very difficult to overcome. Her psychology is going to want her to literally pull away from that. As soon as she starts to get intimidated or threatened, her natural psychology, because she's physically weaker than a man, her natural psychology will be saying, stop competing, get out of this, get away from this, and that's weakness. That's an inherent weakness in a woman's competitive ability. And it's not her fault. That's just the nature of man-woman dynamics. Men are physically stronger. Humans are sexually dimorphic. The man is bigger than the woman. And that means the man always has that trump card. He can always just intimidate her. So say she is legitimately competing somehow. Well, he can just threaten and intimidate her. And there's a good chance that will do the job. If it was another man on the receiving end of the threats and intimidation, the other man would get confrontational, potentially, because remember, he's got a whole bunch more testosterone and he doesn't suffer from the same psychological intimidation because he's a man. They're evenly matched. They're closer in terms of their innate strength. A man who's getting threatened and intimidated, he might send his mafia people and there might be war. Big difference. Fourth reason why women struggle to compete with men when it comes to ascending dominance hierarchies and competing for valuable resources in the political arena or in the business arena. Women, again, it's just their biology. Women get pregnant. Women have a dilemma that men don't have. Women have a ticking clock. So women have a narrow window, we could say, a more narrow window compared to men, whereby they can actually have a family. Some 70-year-old man still has enough juice in the engine. He could churn out a child at 70 or 80 years of age. Men don't have menopause. It's just the way it is. Some 75-year-old dude, wrinkly, fat, ugly, he could impregnate some gal and get a child out of her. He doesn't have menopause. He'll still be probably producing sperm till the day he dies. It's not the same for women. We all know, folks, women around about their 40s will hit menopause, which means they become infertile. So in the woman's psychology, she is keenly aware of this. She's keenly aware that there's a ticking clock. In other words, she is facing more time pressure than a man when it comes to starting a family. A woman's natural biological urge will be to have kids. Now, I know there's individual variation. Some women don't want kids. I know. The average woman, though, on average, women's psychology, they want to have a family. They want to have kids. That's what they've been put on this earth to do, to churn out minions. And women are consciously aware that they have a ticking clock. They can't decide on their 60th birthday that they're going to have a child. They're out of time. So this ticking clock is always ticking in the female psychology. So when you've got some gal in her 20s, in her 30s, perhaps in her 40s, trying to compete against some similarly aged man, she has this sort of, there will be this sort of cognitive dissonance. This cognitive dissonance whereby she wants to compete potentially, but her own biological urges are telling her, you're running out of time. You need to have kids. If you hit a certain point, you can't have kids anymore. And so already, before we even get into the nuts and bolts of being pregnant and how long a woman is pregnant for and all of the care that a child needs, before we even get into that, women are already naturally more distracted than men. Men don't have a ticking clock. A man could wait until his 65th birthday and decide, you know what, I'm kind of done with the intense competition and the ascension or, ascending dominance hierarchies. I'm kind of done with that. I'm ready to retire. I'll have a kid now. The man has that flexibility. He can do that. A woman doesn't. And so a man can be laser focused on the job in hand. The job in hand being climbing the dominance hierarchy. He can be laser focused on this. He doesn't have to worry about menopause, a ticking clock. He doesn't have to worry about carrying the child for 9 fucking months. He doesn't have to worry about when the little ball of jelly is churned out. He doesn't have to worry about, rearing that thing for 5 to 10 years while it's shitting and pissing itself. He doesn't have to worry about any of that. He can be laser focused. He has no distractions in his psychology. His psychology wants him to ascend the dominance hierarchy. That's why he's more emotionally stable. That's why he's disagreeable. That's why he has more testosterone. That's why he's bigger and more muscular and more intimidating than a woman. He wants to do this. An integral part of his sexual display, an integral part of his mate value. Remember part 1, mate value. An integral, critical part of his mate value is acquiring and defending resources. How do you acquire resources? You need to ascend a dominance hierarchy. That is how you're going to get access to the most valuable resources. The more valuable resources you have as a man, the more sexually attractive you are. The more sexually attractive you are, the hotter the chick you can bag and bang, ultimately. So a man's psychology is designed to want to climb a dominance hierarchy. He has no distractions. Women have a whole bunch of distractions. They have a ticking clock. They know menopause is on the horizon. So women have a whole bunch of cognitive dissonance when it comes to competing, because part of them wants to compete, but part of them wants to have a family, and they go back and forth, while they're contemplating whether to start a family or whether to compete. The man is hell-bent on competing. He's thinking of nothing else. He can impregnate some woman in his 60s whenever some of the steam has went out of his engine. No problem to him. The woman can't do that. And she's distracted even thinking about it. Thinking about this dilemma is a distraction. And so this is the 4th reason why women struggle to compete with men. Women, from the get-go, are distracted. Their own biology will distract them. Their own biology and psychology will dissuade them from wanting to compete with men because they have a ticking clock in order to have a family and to churn out some minions. But not only is there the ticking clock, fuck me, folks, if the woman decides to have a family, which is what her biology wants her to do, if the woman does decide to have a family, well, now she's carrying this fucking minion around for 9 months. Her hormones go all over the place. Is that going to cause another distraction? Fuck me, folks. I can't relate to this. But I mean, I could only imagine carrying around a creature inside my abdomen. And I can only imagine the fucking hormonal shifts that that's going to cause in my body. Distraction. It's a visual distraction because you can literally see it protruding out of your abdomen. But there are also going to be a whole bunch of hormonal shifts in the woman. More distraction. So while the man is busy, hell-bent on ascending the dominance hierarchy, the woman is now having a whole bunch of hormonal disruption through carrying this creature. And then it gets better, folks, because not only is the woman having to carry this thing, but when she churns it out, it's the most useless ball of tissue you've ever seen in your life. It's like jelly on the floor. It can't speak. It pisses and shits itself all the time. It can't even walk. It's not useful. It does nothing. All it does is take up the woman's time, energy, and attention. How the fuck are you supposed to compete with a man when you've got all this going on? Emotionally unstable, susceptible to emotional arguments, emotions clouding their judgment, really agreeable, making them more susceptible to wanting to please everyone and to be accepted, making them easier to control and manipulate, easier to intimidate, and to get them to bend the knee. And then we've got the whole idea of menopause, ticking clock, hormonal shifts, having to carry this gremlin, having to fucking give birth to this thing and care for it. How in your right mind could you think, after listening to all of this, that women are in any position to compete effectively with men when it comes to ascending an extremely competitive dominance hierarchy? Give me a break. So, it goes without saying, women, more often than not, are going to struggle enormously to compete with men when it comes to ascending a dominance hierarchy, accumulating status, accumulating the valuable resources that reside at the top of the dominance hierarchy, and ultimately engaging in this intense competition. It is extremely difficult for women. Their own psychology and biology is literally hampering them, handicapping them significantly. Now, this finally allows us to move on to part 4, which is, now that we've understood man and woman mate value, now that we've understood what a dominance hierarchy is, and now that we've understood why women really struggle to compete with men in a dominance hierarchy, we can finally get on to why Deadwood, the movie, was shite, and Deadwood, the series, was great. In Deadwood, the series, all of these things I've just talked about, the nature of men and the nature of women, in Deadwood, the series, all of this was portrayed accurately. I'm just going to try and simplify things here. In Deadwood, Deadwood is a town in the US. And it was this place where the tentacles of the government back in the late 1800s hadn't quite reached Deadwood yet. So Deadwood was this sort of lawless town whereby the people ran the town, not the government. The government hadn't yet spread to Deadwood. And so pretty much Deadwood was run by the people, not by a government. Now in Deadwood, I'm just going to simplify this. And I know some people are going to say, well, you forgot about this and you forgot about that. I'm just going to simplify it here. There were 4 main dominance hierarchies, let's say, within Deadwood. There were 4 main establishments or 4 main key positions in Deadwood. The first one was the Gem Saloon. The Gem Saloon was basically this pub slash brothel. This pub slash whorehouse. So this was one of the main establishments in Deadwood. And the man, Al Swearingen, who ran the Gem Saloon, Al Swearingen, as you can hear, is a man, was a man. So Al Swearingen was the CEO or the boss of the Gem Saloon. The Gem Saloon in Deadwood was a pub slash whorehouse. So we have the Gem Saloon. That's one of the key dominance hierarchies in Deadwood. The second one was called the Bella Union. The Bella Union is basically like the Gem Saloon. The Bella Union was a pub, whorehouse, and a gambling saloon, basically. And it was run by a man called Cy Tolliver, another man. So we've got the Gem Saloon, pub whorehouse, ran by a man, Al Swearingen. We've got the Bella Union, another whorehouse, pub, gambling saloon, run by another man, Cy Tolliver. So at the top of the Gem Saloon dominance hierarchy, we have Al Swearingen, a man. At the top of the Bella Union dominance hierarchy, we have Cy Tolliver, a man. Makes sense. What's the third key position or establishment in Deadwood? The sheriff, what we could call law and order. Who was the sheriff in Deadwood? Seth Bullock. That's correct. Another man. So we could say the third dominance hierarchy, the law and order dominance hierarchy, had a man sitting at the top of it as sheriff, Seth Bullock. And then the fourth and final key establishment or post, we could say, in Deadwood was what I'm just going to call the Chinese Alley. The Chinese Alley is where there were a whole bunch of, you could say, immigrant Chinese workers. They were working for, you guessed it, a Chinese man called Mr. Wu. So Mr. Wu sat at the top of the Chinese Alley dominance hierarchy. He was the kingpin of the Chinese section of the Deadwood population. He was the boss, the CEO of Chinese Alley. So, Deadwood the series. When you look at Deadwood the series, not the movie, Deadwood the series, you have these four key dominance hierarchies within Deadwood. The Gem Saloon, run by Al Swearingen, a man. The Bella Union, run by Cy Tolliver, a man. The sheriff, who was a man, Seth Bullock. And then finally, Chinese Alley, which was run by Mr. Wu, a man. In Deadwood the series, all the women worked for the men. All the whores worked for Al Swearingen and Cy Tolliver. All the Chinese women would have been working with Mr. Wu. And Sheriff Seth Bullock, he's at the top of law and order. A man. And guess what? His second in command, Charlie Utter. A man. So Deadwood the series, the reason why I really liked Deadwood the series from the get-go was because Deadwood the series was accurately portraying man-woman mate value, man-woman dynamics as it comes to ascending dominance hierarchies. It was super consistent with human nature. Even, let me go a step further. In Deadwood, there was a whole bunch of gold discovered in Deadwood. This is why the government started to take an interest in Deadwood, because Deadwood was very fertile ground for mining gold, which the government wanted to get their hands on. Who do you think was the chief gold prospector? Who was the head of the gold mining operation in Deadwood by the end of the series? Who came in as the chief, the president, the CEO, the boss of the gold mining operation? George Hearst, another man in charge of the gold mining operation. And then better still, Deadwood opens a bank. They open a bank. And I know what you may say. For those of you who have watched Deadwood the series, you're now going to say, oh, but Alma Garrett, she was in charge of the bank. She's a woman. She wasn't in charge of the bank. It was the Jew who was in charge of the bank. What was his name? I've forgotten his name. Let me look it up here. Let me see. Let me have a look at this. Let me get a new. Let's look at this together here and see. Deadwood. Now, I've forgotten what his name was. Gosh, it's just totally left me. Let me see. Where is he? Who is the Jew? Totally has left me. Cast of Deadwood. There's Charlie Utter, Leon Ripley, Showmore. I can't possibly continue. There he is. There's the man, Saul Starr. Get a good look at him, folks. Because this is going to piss all the feminists off and all the women who think they've got the gotcha moment. Take a good look at that face right there. Look at that. That's the actor who played Saul Starr. Let me get my main screen back up. Let's see. Saul Starr. So, for those of you who think, oh, well, Alma Garrett, she was running the bank. No, she wasn't. Saul Starr, who is the sheriff's friend, by the way, Seth Bullock. Saul Starr is a Jew, and he's really good with numbers. Think of him like an accountant, sort of. He was the one who was in charge of all of the numbers with respect to the bank. And so, who really is running the bank? Alma Garrett, she owned all the gold, the gold claim. She inherited the gold from her husband when she died. All she did was inherit the gold. And what she basically did was she effectively donated her gold so that they could start a bank using her gold. She didn't own the bank. She didn't run the bank. She wasn't doing the numbers. She was just the face of the bank. The person who was really running the bank was Saul Starr, a Jew, another man. So, Deadwood the series, whether it's Al Swearingen in the James Saloon, Cy Tolliver in the Bella Union, Seth Bullock as the sheriff, Mr. Wu in charge of Chinese Alley, George Hearst, who came in and took over the gold mining operation, or Saul Starr, who was effectively running the bank, using Alma Garrett's face, because she was the one who owned the gold claim. So folks, Deadwood the series, as far as I was concerned, got their man-woman dynamics spot on. All of the key dominance hierarchies in Deadwood, sitting at the top of all of these dominance hierarchies, were men, as you would expect, for all the reasons that I've laid out. Sitting at the top were the men. Al Swearingen, Cy Tolliver, Seth Bullock, Mr. Wu, George Hearst, Saul Starr, Charlie Utter, all men. And even Langrish, Jack Langrish, he's another guy who comes into the series in season 3, Jack Langrish is a theatre guy. He owns the theatre. Another man telling all the female employees what to do. So Jack Langrish, he comes into season 3. Another man, he owns the theatre in Deadwood. So folks, what am I trying to say here? Why did I like the series? I liked the series because, folks, when I watch a series or a movie, the first thing that I'm looking out for is I'm looking for the movie or the series to accurately portray human nature. I want to see the series accurately portraying how men truly think and act and how women truly think and act. And Deadwood, the series, was excellent. They did an excellent job. All the men were big, disagreeable, status-seeking, hierarchy-ascending individuals who wanted money, power, influence, status, women. And all the women in the show were pretty much underneath the men. Not in a negative way, but they were underneath the men when it came to ascending dominance hierarchies. Women, you see Deadwood the series, the women were not competing with the men. Fuck me, it's laughable to think about it. If you've watched Deadwood, it is truly laughable. Imagine some chick trying to compete with Al Swearingen. Imagine some chick trying to compete with Cy Tolliver, Seth Bullock, Charlie Utter, Mr. Wu, George Hurst. Not happening. And that's good, because that's consistent with human nature. So that's fine. That's why I liked it. It was very consistent with human nature. And so, when the men and women were interacting throughout Deadwood the series, I could see an accurate portrayal of man-woman dynamics. The women, I'll give you an example. I'll give you a couple of examples, actually. Whenever Jane, Calamity Jane, for those of you who have watched Deadwood, there's a character called Calamity Jane. And she shoots her mouth off a lot. She likes to get drunk. Now, I like her as a character, but she oftentimes gets quite drunk. And sometimes she'll shoot her mouth off. And she'll talk a big game. And frequently throughout the series, when it really came, when the rubber hit the road, and she was getting put face to face with one of the big players, with one of the big disagreeable men, she buckled every time. She got intimidated, she got scared, she went crying for help. Totally accurate. So she talked a big game, Calamity Jane, and then when it was stuck on her, she pissed her pants. As you would expect, when you've got a big, strong, disagreeable male in your face. So Calamity Jane, multiple times throughout the series, something on my lip. Let's get rid of that. All right. Multiple times in the series, she gave it the big one, and then when it really came to her, backing up her words with legitimate action, she pissed her pants, as I would expect. So that was accurate. What else happened? Well, Alma Garrett, the woman who had the gold claim in Deadwood, who opened the bank that Saul Starr was running, Alma Garrett gets threatened by the big gold miner, George Hurst, who comes into town. George Hurst threatens to kill her if she doesn't give him her gold claim, because he wants all the gold. He's part of the government machinery, you could say. So George Hurst threatens to kill Alma Garrett. And he actually, when she was walking through the thoroughfare, he gets one of his men to take shots at her, to try and intimidate her. What does Alma Garrett do? She goes running to a man for help. She goes to the gem saloon for Al Swearengen's help. She goes to Al looking for Al to solve the problem. Again, accurate. That's what I would expect a woman to do. I wouldn't expect a woman to pick out her gun and return fire. That's inconsistent. That wouldn't make sense to me. What did she do? She got all emotional. She got all woozy. She started to stumble over herself. She goes into the gem saloon and she basically looks for Al Swearengen's protection and help. Consistent. She looks for Seth Bullock's, the sheriff's, protection and help. She's looking for a man to help her, in other words. That's accurate. That's what I would expect if a woman gets intimidated. I would expect her to go running to a man for protection and help. So we have Calamity Jane. Calamity Jane frequently shoots her mouth off, talks a big game, and then when a man sticks it on her, her arse falls out of her trousers and she goes away sobbing and crying and scared. Accurate. Al McGarrett, whenever she gets threatened by George Hurst that he's going to kill her and he starts firing shots at her, she goes running to the men. She goes running to Al Swearengen. She goes running to Seth Bullock. Accurate. Another example, Trixie, one of the whores from the Gem Saloon. She sees what George Hurst is doing. George Hurst, think of him like the government. He comes into Deadwood and he basically wants to steal all the gold. He's a gold miner. So he comes in, he wants to steal all the gold. And Trixie, who is one of the whores at the Gem Saloon, and she was a former romantic interest of Al Swearengen, she attempts to go and kill George Hurst. She goes up to his room in the hotel and tries to shoot him dead. But of course, she misses the mark. She shoots him in the shoulder. And George Hurst, instead of dying, he survives. And what does Trixie do? When Trixie realizes that she didn't successfully kill George Hurst, who does she go running to? Saul Starr, the man who runs the bank. And who does she ultimately end up in the protection of? You guessed it, Al Swearengen in the Gem Saloon. Exactly what I would expect a woman to do. Woman, emotions clouding her judgment. It's just beautiful. You know, George Hurst, he's basically the government. If you kill George Hurst, no matter how much you hate what George Hurst is doing, he's stealing all the gold and he's basically trying to, ruin Deadwood as everybody knew it. He's destroying the fabric of Deadwood, stealing all the gold and bringing the government in. So you may not like George Hurst, but Trixie doesn't really realize that by killing George Hurst, that's going to bring an even bigger problem to Deadwood's doorstep. Because if you kill someone as high and mighty as George Hurst, as high as George Hurst is on the dominance hierarchy, that will draw the attention of the government. And now Deadwood is all but cooked. I mean, it's basically cooked at that stage. If you kill George Hurst, assassinate him, that is definitely going to draw the attention of the government. And the government is going to basically say, this is a totally lawless, reckless place. We can't allow this to continue. We're going to send in the rest of the troops. We're going to capture Deadwood. And whatever hope Deadwood had of surviving, or at least delaying the arrival of the government, that all goes down the toilet if Trixie successfully kills George Hurst. And all the men know this. This is why Seth Bullock, the sheriff, doesn't kill George Hurst, even though he wants to. This is why Cy Tolliver doesn't do it. This is why Al Swearengen doesn't do it. This is why Charlie Utter doesn't do it. This is why Mr. Wu doesn't do it. All the men know this. All the men hate George Hurst. Because George Hurst basically represents the government. He's coming in to basically destroy Deadwood and steal all of Deadwood's resources in the form of gold. So all the men know this, that he's a piece of shit. But the men also know that if they kill him, that's probably going to expedite the end of Deadwood. The government will be like a fly on shite on them if they kill someone as high profile and prominent as George Hurst. So the men are sort of playing this game whereby they don't want to kill Hurst, but they're trying to figure out a solution to his presence in Deadwood. What does Trixie do, the whore? Emotions cloud the judgment. She sees all this and says, I can't take any more of this. I'm going to go up and kill George Hurst. Emotions clouding judgment. So she goes completely against the plan. She goes completely against what the men want to actually do. She goes up, tries to kill him, botches the job. She doesn't even kill him. She shoots him in the shoulder. And of course, realizing the error of her ways, what does she do? She starts to sob and cry and get all emotional, and she runs to a man for help. That sounds about right. Emotions clouding judgment, and then when she fucks up, she goes running to a man to try and salvage the situation. Perfectly accurate. Beautiful. And I could keep going. I could keep going with examples. The point is, in Deadwood, all of the dynamics, in Deadwood the series, all of the dynamics between the men and the women are spot on. The women are basically servants to the men. Now, you may not like that, but folks, reality is, that is how man-woman dynamics are set up. Men are set up to climb dominance hierarchies without any other care for anything else. That's what they're designed to do. Men are designed to get to the top of dominance hierarchies because it's a critical part of their sexual display, like we talked about in part 1. They need to acquire a whole bunch of resources, defend them, and then give the woman the signal that they're going to funnel those resources her way. It's integral that men are acquiring resources and ascending dominance hierarchies to acquire more status. So Deadwood the series has all of this stuff that we've talked about bang on. The men are in charge, basically, and the women work for the men, and the women listen to the men. And when the women get into trouble, they go to the men. And the men solve all the problems. The women listen to the men. The women obey the men. Everybody gets along just fine. So Deadwood the series had all of this stuff pretty much bang on. That's why it got an 8 out of 10, from my perspective. But what happened to the movie? Why does the movie get a 2 out of 10? And again, the only reason I give Deadwood the movie a 2 out of 10 is because the acting was still good. The actors did a good job. There was nothing wrong with the quality of acting. So I'm being generous. It really honestly was a 1 out of 10, but I'm going to be generous and give it a 2 out of 10 because, the actors acted well. It wasn't the fault of the quality of acting. So why did the movie score 2 out of 10? Well, you could almost guess why, folks. What do you think happened here, if we had to guess? Deadwood the series was written and released 2004 to 2006. That's when the series was made and released. 2004 to 2006. Deadwood the movie comes out in 2019. And remember, folks, 2019 is a different time, isn't it? In 2019, you've got trans rights and LGBTQ rights, and you've got equality. You've got feminism. Women should have equal rights to all the things that men have access to. There should be more women CEOs. There should be more women in positions of power. Men are evil. It's all about women. Boss ladies. Boss ladies. 2019, we have found ourselves in the middle of woke culture, whereby women can do everything that men can do. And not only can they do everything that men do, but they're better than men. Men are just these horrible, narcissistic, evil people. It's all about women. And you know what? You should cut your schlong off if you're a man. That's what you should do. Men are so evil. They're so evil, folks, that you should cut your schlong off and become a woman if you're a man. You know? Good idea, that. Make sure and get the hormone medication into you to suppress your testosterone. Grow a pair of tits. Why not? Get them, surgically implanted onto you. That's 2019, folks. We are right. We're heading right into the middle of the woke nonsense. In particular, this idea of women having, equal rights to men, and even though women aren't, as capable at doing certain things as men are, they should still get paid the same amount. They should have access to the same positions of power. And so what happens? By the time we get to 2019, dominance hierarchies look a little funny, don't they? We've got a whole bunch of women at the top of dominance hierarchies. Do you think those women are there organically? Do you think those women earnestly and honestly outcompeted the men to find themselves at the top of political dominance hierarchies, to find themselves at the top of business dominance hierarchies as CEOs? Do you think these women actually outcompeted men? Fuck me, folks. They were planted there, in all probability. Other men planted women at the top of dominance hierarchies. Oh, I wonder why they would do that. Why would it be a good idea, if you're a man, to get some female politician in control of a country? Why would that be a good idea? Let's speculate here. Well, you see, if you have some female politician as prime minister or president, that means the men can sit in the shadows, control and manipulate the women, get the women to do the dirty work for the men, and the men don't have to show their face. It's wonderful. Perfect little strategy. It's much harder to control a man who becomes president or prime minister. Just look at the Donald. How easy is it to control the Donald? It's not very easy, for reasons that we've talked about before. Because the Donald is a big, disagreeable narcissist who wants a whole bunch of status and resources, and he wants to find himself all alone at the top of the dominance hierarchies that he's involved in, political and business. It's much harder to control a big, disagreeable schmuck like Donald Trump. But if you can take a few women that are emotionally unstable, more agreeable, weaker than men physically, and have all the hormonal crap that goes along with being a woman, if you can stick one of them in to a political position of power, then you, as a man, you're able to control that person a heck of a lot easier than if it was another man. That's why whenever I see female politicians, I think to myself, Lord Jesus, very organic that. I'm sure that woman earnestly fought her way to the top of that dominance hierarchy. Considering everything that we've talked about on this show, folks, I'm sure that you are sold on the notion that all those female politicians and all those female CEOs, they just, beat off all the male competition, didn't they? Because they're just so wonderful. Yeah. Okay. That's what we call woke culture. This idea that women can be men and women can be better than men, all the things that men have been great at throughout human natural history. No, that's all a lie. Women are actually just as good, if not better. And so as a result, we should have equal rights. And there should be more women CEOs. There should be more women in business. There should be more women here, there, and everywhere. Fuck men, they're evil. Okay, so that's 2019, basically. 2019 is the age of wokeness, whereby we've got a whole bunch of women at the top of dominance hierarchies. Artificially, they have been artificially planted there by other men so that those other men have an easier time controlling them. Because if it was just an open marketplace, the women would be probably nowhere near these positions of power, and you would have a whole bunch of disagreeable males in there, looking out for their own interests. And you see, big disagreeable, status-seeking, hierarchy-ascending males are a lot more difficult to control. Much easier just to get a woman in there. and you can intimidate the woman, you can deceive the woman, you can basically play on her emotionality. Much easier to get a woman in there because it's much easier to control a woman and to manipulate her. So that's 2019, folks. That's the age of 2019. When was Deadwood the movie released? What? When was it released? That's right, 2019. So Deadwood the series, which I really liked, was released 2004 to 2006. There was still some sanity in the world when it came to man-woman dynamics. There was still some sanity. There was still some honesty in the portrayal of man-woman dynamics back in the early 2000s. By the time we reach 2019, I'm afraid all logic and sanity has fallen out of everyone's back end. There isn't really much logic or sanity anymore. And unfortunately, folks, Deadwood the movie, as you can probably imagine, is full of a whole bunch of woke nonsense. Let me explain. Let's just go through. I've given you a very quick breakdown of Deadwood the series and why I liked it. Remember I talked about all of the different dominance hierarchies within Deadwood, all the different establishments, the Gem Saloon, the Bella Union, the Sheriff for Law and Order, Chinese Alley, George Hurst running the gold mining operation, Saul Starr running the bank. Men, everywhere, as you would expect. And all the women are working under the men, as you would expect, doing different things, rearing the children, looking after the children at home, teaching in the school, working as whores in the whorehouses, as you would expect. For the late 1800s, that would make sense. But Lord Jesus, we get to Deadwood the movie, and wait till you get a load of this. Al Swearingen, one of the main characters in the show, who is at the top of the dominance hierarchy of the Gem Saloon. Badass Al. Al, in Deadwood the movie, is dying of liver disease. Even though in real life, because Al Swearingen, Deadwood was actually a real place. These were actually real people back in the 1800s. In real life, Al Swearingen does not die of liver disease. He moves out of Deadwood and goes somewhere else as soon as the government comes in, as you would expect. But oh no, in the movie, Al Swearingen is dying of liver disease. So one of our big alphas has now been struck down by liver disease, even though it's historically completely inaccurate. And what happens? That's right. Who is going to inherit the Gem Saloon business? One of the key establishments in Deadwood. Who's going to inherit it and become a boss? That's right, Trixie. Remember Trixie, the one I was describing, tried to shoot George Hurst? And she botched the job, and then she started to cry, and she ran to Saul Starr and Al Swearingen for protection. Remember that gal? Yeah, she's now in charge of the Gem Saloon. So there we have our first boss lady, as I like to call them. I'm always on the lookout, folks. When I watch a TV series or a movie, I'm always on the lookout for boss ladies, because boss ladies do not exist in reality. That is part of woke nonsense. So we have our first boss lady. Trixie's now at the top of the Gem Saloon dominance hierarchy in Deadwood the movie. That's the first red flag. What's the second red flag? Remember I told you about the Bella Union? Another key establishment, dominance hierarchy in Deadwood. Remember the Bella Union was run by Cy Tolliver, another big alpha male? Yeah, well, in Deadwood the movie, guess who's running the Bella Union? That's right. Another woman. What the fuck's her name? I've forgotten her name too. Hold on do I think, if I can get this name, without looking it up. What is her name? Hold on, I'm gonna have to look this up. I can't be having that. Let's see. There's old Saul Star on the screen. Let's have a look and see. Where is she? I'll know her face as soon as I see her. Alma Garrett, E.B. Farnham, Joni Stubbs. Taking another blank. Here she is. Here's the new CEO up on screen of the Bella Union. That looks like a CEO there, doesn't it, folks? That looks like a highly testosteronized alpha male. Yeah. She looks like she would be better placed on the catwalk or on a beauty pageant. But no, she's in charge of the Bella Union. Let me get the main screen back up here because I'm having great fun, actually. I'm glad I forgot her name. I'm glad I forgot her name because I could put her face up on the screen. Joni Stubbs. So we did have Cy Tolliver. He was the big alpha in charge of Bella Union in Deadwood the series. But you see in the movie, Cy's no longer in charge. And you know who's in charge? One of his former whores, Joni Stubbs. Second boss lady. You can already see, isn't this great, folks? Deadwood the movie is really consistent, isn't it? With man-woman, mate value, man-woman interactions, man-woman dynamics. So far, we've got two boss ladies. Wonderful stuff. We've got Trixie is going to be the boss lady of the Gem Saloon. And we've got Joni Stubbs, who's going to be the boss lady of the Bella Union. Wonderful. Great stuff. We have a few more boss ladies, believe it or not. Remember old Alma Garrett? She was the one in Deadwood the series who had the gold claim. And she was using her gold claim to open the bank that Saul Star was running. Remember her? Alma Garrett is the one who, when she was threatened by George Hurst, ran crying to Al Swearingen and to Seth Bullock. She ran crying for the protection of two men. That's Alma Garrett. So Alma Garrett decides to come back to Deadwood for some reason. This didn't even make sense in the movie. Alma Garrett in the series, she sells her gold claim to George Hurst so that Hurst won't kill her. So she sells the bank, basically. The bank gets done away with. She sells all her gold to George Hurst, basically the government. And so in return, she gets to keep her life. For some reason, she leaves Deadwood. The whole point of her selling the gold claim was so that she could stay in Deadwood. That was the whole point. If she wanted to leave Deadwood, then she would have just taken her gold claim with her. The whole point was she's selling the gold claim to George Hurst because she wants to stay in Deadwood and be alive, keep her life. So for some reason, she sells her gold claim to George Hurst and then leaves Deadwood without her gold. Make that make sense. But anyway, so she leaves Deadwood after selling her gold claim for some reason. And then at the time of the movie, 10 years later, she comes back to Deadwood. And of course, what happens? It's just beautiful, folks. George Hurst comes back as a senator to Deadwood. So he comes back to Deadwood, and what he does is he kills another man, Charlie Utter. You've heard me mention him previously. Sort of the deputy to the sheriff. So George Hurst comes back and kills Charlie Utter. And the reason why George Hurst kills him is because he wants Charlie Utter's land to put up these telegraph poles. Charlie Utter, of course, didn't want to give him his land for some reason. Even though Charlie Utter knew that would be a sort of suicide mission, that was a death sentence. You know, Alma was happy to sell her claim back in the series, but for some reason Charlie, under the counsel of the sheriff, Seth Bullock, wants to, put his stake in the ground, and even though he knows Hurst is going to kill him, which, by the way, is another historical inaccuracy. Charlie Utter doesn't die, just like Al Swearingen. In real life, Charlie Utter doesn't die. He doesn't get killed by George Hurst. He leaves Deadwood, like Al Swearingen. But you know, the movie wanted to make a point. Another man gets killed. Al Swearingen, liver disease, he's going to die. Trixie's going to get the gem saloon. Boss lady. Joni Stubbs, she's the boss lady over at the Belly Union. Charlie Utter gets killed by George Hurst because he doesn't want to give up his land. Absolute, logic falling out of his arse. But of course, it's historically inaccurate, so that makes sense. It makes sense that didn't make sense in the movie. But anyway, George Hurst kills Charlie Utter because he wants his land. Now, what ends up happening is there's basically an auction that takes place in Deadwood. And George Hurst is a senator in the US government. He's extremely powerful, influential, rich and wealthy. And the movie tries to convince us that at this auction, whereby Charlie Utter's land is now up for auctioning, because of course Hurst hired a couple of mercenaries to kill Charlie Utter, so it didn't look like him. His hands were clean, but now that Charlie Utter's dead and his land is up for grabs, it goes to auction. And so what you would expect to happen is you would expect the extremely powerful, influential, rich George Hurst to be able to outbid anyone for Charlie Utter's land. That's what you would expect. Logic would tell you that should happen. But oh no, we get our third boss lady of the movie. Alma Garrett, for some reason, sells her gold claim to George Hurst in the series. She leaves Deadwood for some reason. The whole point of her selling the gold claim, as I said, was so that she could stay in Deadwood and not be killed. But she sells her gold, leaves Deadwood. She comes back 10 years later for some reason. And even though she sold all her gold, she somehow manages to outbid, basically, the government. So she outbids George Hurst, and Alma Garrett acquires Charlie Utter's land. Again, please make that make sense to me. So George Hurst is basically the government. Powerful, influential, rich, and somehow Alma Garrett, who has come back to Deadwood for some bizarre reason, we don't even know why she left. That's bizarre, and fuck knows why she's coming back. She outbids the government. But she's a boss lady. Remember, it's 2019. So that's the third boss lady. We have this beautiful scene in the Gem Saloon. That's where the auction takes place. While the alpha is dying of liver disease upstairs, Al Swearingen. Yeah. So in the Gem Saloon, we have this auction. And Alma Garrett, a woman, oh yeah, woman, she outbids the government. Yeah. That's our third boss lady. Because you know, the movie really loved showing this scene. It loved showing George Hurst, big alpha man. They really loved showing him getting outdone by a woman. They just loved that. They had to show us that. That's our third boss lady. We've got a fourth boss lady. Lord Jesus, it's a miracle. Remember I was talking about Calamity Jane? Calamity Jane was this character who talked a good game in the series, and then whenever she was actually confronted by a man, she pissed her pants. Went away scared, running for help. But you see, by the time we get to Deadwood the movie, she's a different woman. A different woman altogether. Maybe she got a transgender surgery back in the late 1800s. Maybe, Doc Cochran in the movie, because there's a doctor in Deadwood, maybe he had expertise in the late 1800s about how to put a schlong and a pair of nuts onto a woman. Because it seems that Calamity Jane has either got a schlong and a pair of nuts transplanted onto her or she's grown them in 10 years. Because all of a sudden, Calamity Jane is now a boss lady also. Guess what happens? Harry Manning, Seth Bullock, who is the sheriff, his second in command, Harry Manning, is going to shoot Seth Bullock. So he turns on Seth. Looks like he's going to double cross him. Because, you know, George Hurst is back in town. There's a whole bunch of trouble brewing. And it looks like, for some reason, Harry Manning, who is sort of like the deputy to Seth Bullock, the sheriff, turns on his own sheriff and is about to shoot Seth Bullock. Who saves the day, do you think? Who do you think saves the day? Do you think it was Al Swearingen? Do you think it was Cy Tolliver? Do you think it was Mr. Wu? Do you think it was Seth Bullock himself just snuffs out the trouble? Do you think, oh no, Charlie Utter's dead. That's right, but Jesus, Charlie can't help out. Sure, he's dead. Historically inaccurate, by the way, but he's dead in the movie. Oh well, liberties were taken. No, Calamity Jane must have went through either a transgender surgery to get a schlong and a pair of nuts put onto her, or she grew them, because all of a sudden, she shoots Harry Manning like a boss lady. And you know, she puts the gun back in her holster. Boss lady. So basically, throughout the entire series, Calamity Jane, as you would expect from a woman, as you would expect, talks a big game, and then when it's stuck on her by a man, she cowers in the corner. Makes sense, given everything that we've talked about. But in the movie, oh no, Calamity Jane becomes a boss lady, and she saves Seth Bullock's life, the sheriff, by shooting his deputy who looked like he was going to turn on him. Calamity Jane grew a pair of nuts and a schlong and basically became a man. Oh, totally accurate. Totally accurate with female psychology, you know. Folks, this is why Deadwood the series was great, and it's why Deadwood the movie was shite. Deadwood the movie was shite because what they have done, what the writers and the director and the producers and all the people, what they've basically done is they have injected into the movie all of the woke garbage that's happening in 2019. Even though the movie is set in the late 1800s, we have a bunch of boss ladies walking around in the 1800s. Like nowadays, folks, it's accepted that you have a whole bunch of boss ladies. But we've already talked about that. They aren't really boss ladies. They have been allowed to artificially climb or be inserted into the high peak of a dominance hierarchy so that they can be controlled and manipulated by some other man. So we've got a whole bunch of boss ladies now in 2026 being allowed, may I add, to be a boss lady by some other man. They haven't earnestly and honestly outcompeted the other men. Nope. Some other man or some other group of men are literally weaponizing women, using them, planting them artificially at the top of a dominance hierarchy so that the man can control the women, because it would be easier to control a woman than it would be in comparison to control a man. Okay, so in 2026, even though it's artificial and the dominance hierarchies are being tinkered with artificially in 2026, it's far more commonplace to see boss ladies in 2026 and in 2019 as well. But remember, folks, Deadwood is set in the late 1800s. Fuck me. The concept of, you know, a whole bunch of boss ladies walking and running around, basically in charge of the operation of Deadwood, one-upping all of these alpha males. Folks, this is the reason why Deadwood the movie was shite. Deadwood the movie was shite, from my perspective, because it has done a 180 on man-woman dynamics. The reason why, in all probability, that they've done a 180 is because the movie was released in 2019, we are in the age of wokeness. And what they have simply done is they have created a whole bunch of boss ladies in the movie. They have literally altered the facts of what happened in Deadwood. They have introduced a whole bunch of historical inaccuracies so that they can have boss ladies shine bright in the movie. And for me, that is why Deadwood, the movie, is shite. I will never watch it again. I will never recommend it. The series is excellent because the series, which was released and created back in 2004 to 2006, it doesn't suffer from this woke garbage. But the movie does. And it's disgusting to look at for me. To watch one of the big alphas, Al Swearingen, die of liver disease. It's not even historically accurate. Al Swearingen, I am going to repeat, does not die of liver disease. Charlie Utter does not get killed by George Hurst. But you see, all of this stuff has to happen so that we can get ourselves to a position in the movie whereby we have boss ladies. If Al Swearingen doesn't die of liver disease, then Trixie doesn't get to be a boss lady. If Charlie Utter doesn't die, then Alma Garrett doesn't get to be a boss lady during the auction when it comes to who's going to acquire Charlie Utter's land, which is now up for sale. Cy Tolliver. Now I understand. The actor who played Cy Tolliver actually died between the series ending and the movie being created. So okay, we can't expect the actor to rise from the dead and play Cy Tolliver. But this idea of putting Joni Stubbs, a whore, in charge of fucking the Belly Union. And here's the funny thing. In Deadwood, the series, the same Joni Stubbs tried to open a whorehouse on her own with another woman. In the series, I actually forgot about this one. This is beautiful. In Deadwood, the series, Joni Stubbs tries to leave the Belly Union where she's under the control of Cy Tolliver. She tries to leave and start up her own whorehouse. And she fails miserably, as you would expect. Ha! She tries to compete with Cy Tolliver at the Belly Union and with Al Swearingen at the Gem Saloon. Deadwood, the TV series, gets this spot on. It's beautiful. So Joni Stubbs, who in the movie is the boss lady of the Belly Union, she literally, in the TV series, she tries to start up her own whorehouse. And she fails miserably. Miserable failure. And yet here we have her in the movie. Boss lady. So you can see, folks, that's just yet another example of why Deadwood the series is bang on. Again, late 1800s, some chick trying to start up a whorehouse, especially when she's in competition with the Belly Union run by a man and the Gem Saloon run by another alpha male, as you would expect, some chick starting from scratch with two of the most important influential establishments, the Belly Union and the Gem Saloon, already firmly established in Deadwood, you would obviously expect Joni Stubbs to have an absolute complete failure. That would be the most likely outcome if you, as a woman, tried to compete against the pre-existing whorehouses which basically run Deadwood. Completely accurate. The series got it spot on. She completely failed. But here we are in the movie. Boss lady. She's now in charge, not just of her own whorehouse, she's in charge of the Belly Union. one of the biggest establishments in Deadwood, one of the most important dominance hierarchies. Nonsense. So folks, that is the long and short of this. Deadwood the movie is shite because it's full of woke garbage. Specifically, what Deadwood the movie does is it literally starts to manipulate the historical facts of Deadwood and the actual real people who lived in Deadwood. The movie alters the historical facts so that it can create all of these opportunities for boss ladies to rise to the surface. Woke garbage. This idea of Calamity Jane all of a sudden growing a pair of nuts. Nonsense. And that's why I loathe the movie. It's a horrible movie. The acting, the actors are great, but the movie, it's horrible. It has done a 180 on man-woman dynamics. And it's so obvious, folks. If you watch the series and then you watch the movie, you will be very confused. Like, it's very confusing to look at. Because even if you don't have an intimate understanding of man-woman dynamics, you can kind of tell, unless you're a feminist, obviously. If you're a feminist and you're, one of these fucking campaigners for equal rights for women, that women should just, independent of how capable they are, women should just have access to the same stuff that men should have access to. If you're one of those people, you'll think the movie was great. You'll think it's, women power, female empowerment. That's what the feminists will say. For anyone who has any ounce, if anybody has a drop of logic, and their logic hasn't fallen out of their arse, thanks to wokeness, anybody with a bit of logic and an understanding of man-woman dynamics will look at Deadwood the movie and come to the logical conclusion, which is, it's shite. It's total. Not only is it historically inaccurate, but the historical inaccuracies have been used to allow women to be boss ladies. They have literally manipulated the facts of what happened in Deadwood so that in the movie, people can see boss ladies running the show. Horrific. Dreadful. Deadwood the series, great stuff. Deadwood the movie, shite. So anyway, long show, folks. 2 hours, 18 minutes. I knew this could be a long one. I'm actually laughing. I took a number of blanks. I couldn't remember Joni Stubbs and Saul Starr. Isn't it funny, folks, how the memory can just take a total blank? Just when you need it to work. But thanks to the internet, we're all sorted. Didn't derail the show. But anyway, folks, that is our show. Lots to learn there. This is actually, Deadwood is a great way. Comparing Deadwood the series with Deadwood the movie is a great way to learn about man-woman mate value, dominance hierarchies, and man-woman dynamics as they relate to dominance hierarchies. It's a great case study to analyse these two pieces of art, we could say. The series and the movie. Oh, I have her. Ugh, don't want her in the mouth. But anyway, it's a great thing to compare them. A lot to learn there. But anyway, that draws everything to a close, folks. Friday evening. That has hopefully got your weekend off to a cracking start. If you're a feminist, you're probably pissed off. But sure, look, the reality is, nobody will probably make it this far in the live show. So maybe nobody will really be that pissed off. Who's going to watch 2 hours and 20 minutes? If you did make it this far, get down into the comments. Let me know what you thought about the show. Hit the little thumbs up, the little like button. Some feedback, it's always welcome. Hit the thumbs down button if you want to. If you're a feminist out there, women empowerment, female empowerment, hit the thumbs down if you're pissed off. And then finally, folks, if you like in general what we do here at Bandido Talks, feel free to subscribe to the channel here on YouTube, Bandido Talks. is live every week here on YouTube. You're going to have to subscribe, though, to be notified when we have a live show up and coming, because the Bandido does his live shows on Universal Bandido time. That just means UBT. It means the Bandido does his shows on the days that he wants, at the times that he wants to do the shows at. So you're going to have to subscribe to get notifications. Also, use the scrolling black banner below to direct yourself over to Rumble. Bandido Talks is also operating over on Rumble. We do different live shows over there. It's more political over there. US-based stories. Earlier this week, we were talking about Eric Swalwell and the weaponization of women. That was a good show. Head over to Rumble. Subscribe over on Rumble. Check out some of our content over there. All the live shows are different. More political stuff, folks, over on Rumble. And then use the scrolling black banner to head over to X. Follow Bandido Talks over on X. You'll be notified of any upcoming live shows. We do a little bit of written commentary over there as well. Follow over on X. Subscribe over on Rumble. Subscribe here on YouTube. That's everything from me this evening, folks. Enjoy the rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening. Your day in general. Enjoy the incoming weekend. And with all of that said, folks, it is over and out. This week on YouTube, live from the Bandido.